Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for a session of tasting some of the greatest wines in the world of wine today. My name is Ian Blackburn. I'm a wine educator, and I host learnaboutwine.com. And I just want to thank you for joining us tonight. No, that's not your screen. I literally have something like trying to grow out of the top of my nose. So apologize for that visual. But we're going to get started tonight and start drinking some good wine. That pain will go away soon. Thank you for joining us. I love sharing some of the greatest wines ever made with folks. It's so much fun to be able to get your reactions as well. That's what I really enjoy about this Zoom environment, is that you are not just watching me, but you're participating. You actually, many of you have the little jars that we sent out with 2-ounce samples of the wines. You're going to be tasting with me. I'd love to encourage you to use that chat box. Tell me what you smell, what you taste, if you like the wine, if you don't like the wine. These wines are kind of, outside of our own experience tonight. These wines are pretty, I won't say hard to get, but they're really benchmark collectible investment grade type of wines that I know you're going to be able to fetch a higher dollar sum in the years to come. These are investments, like I said, and I appreciate you let me hang that phone up. All right, let's get started with wine number one. Those of you that have the wines, those of you that don't, and you're just watching, I love to be able to share our information with you tonight. Just have a seat, grab a glass of wine, and let's begin. I'm going to take off my little virtual background. Go. Excellent. Here we go. Does anybody have any questions before we begin? We are streamed on Facebook on our page, which is under the Merchant of Wine. And here's our slideshow for this evening. Here's a look at the 5 bottles, which I actually have in front of me. And we poured about 11 pours out of the bottle, me being the 11th. And everyone's got the same size pour. And we're going to be tasting this 2017 Chateau Gruyere, which I will say is an incredible bottle of wine. Also, one of the smallest bottles of wine I've ever seen. I questioned whether it was a 750 or not. I'm not sure of the history behind the package, but it's so simplistic and so light. It does not look or feel like a $500 bottle of white wine from the outside, but that's what's kind of maybe part of its mystique. Let's take a look at it a little closer. We are all over France today. We're down in the Rhone Valley, in the northern Rhone, with Chateau Gruyere. Here's a better look at the bottle here. And we're tasting the 2017. This wine, I believe, will ultimately taste its best in the next year and potentially plateau from here into a wonderful spot for several years to come. It is not necessary to age Gruyere for long periods of time. And you may hear some people discourage you from aging the wine, but I know for a fact these wines age beautifully, and the producers enjoyed seeing these things with 5 to 10 years on them. This particular wine, 97 points by Robert Parker. And I just want to put a couple of ideas in your head as you smell this wine. Try not to drink it down too quickly, because I really believe that the real pleasure here in this wine is the aromatic, that nose, that's so pretty, so perfume-like. boasting flamboyant stone fruits, dressed up with hints of jasmine and white pepper, full-bodied and rich, never seems heavy or oily, boasting a long, cool, refreshing finish. I had the great and extreme pleasure to drink a good amount of a bottle of this wine about 6 months ago with a very good friend who is an incredible cook. And he prepared an Indian feast, really top quality Indian cooking. He's a fantastic chef, and he studied all over the world, and really went in deeply on the spices and the preparation, and it was a beautiful meal. And as I was going through all the possibilities of what I could bring for dinner, the idea of bringing Viognier was promoted by my research on a couple of dishes, seeing that Viognier would be a potential pairing. And I thought, oh, wow, I've got a great Viognier. And it was one of those days where you felt compelled to spend this type of money to really experiment and to explore. And I think this wine really is a journey. And you have to realize just how special, how historic this property is. This property goes back to the 3rd century, and really was established with prior history, just with no vine planting around it. Someone with great passion for vineyards decided to plant their stakes in this site in the Northern Rhone. And so there have been vines planted here contiguously since the 3rd century. It was acquired in 2011 by billionaire Pinot family, who own a number of different wine brands. They own a small company called Louis Vuitton, and they also own Hennessy and Moet and Veuve Clicquot and a lot of other things. I think it's safe to say this is probably their smallest holding, but I know they also own a vineyard in Tibet that is at 6,000 feet. I'm not sure how much production they are making there, but here we're looking at 10,000 bottles. That's less than 1,000 cases a year. And this very special little site is inside of an area known as Condrieu. And Chateaubriand is so important, they gave it its own appellation. It's only, I think, 9 hectares, or maybe it's even less than that. I think it's 9 acres in total size. And so very, very teeny little hillside right on the Rhone River. And it is 100% Viognier, which is what Condrieu is also made from. You can see these terraced vineyards, very steep slopes. And now they have obviously invested and brought in some great winemaking equipment and a beautiful modernization of a very ancient facility. Very, very clean, very well run. And this is just a magical wine. And I will say, as a wine person who's been involved in the wine business my entire life, that taste I had 6 months ago was the first time I'd ever been invited to taste this wine. Of course, I brought the own bottle, but my first time being able to taste it. And this is my second tonight, tasting it with you. As we look at it, 17 Viognier does carry some wonderful golden tones. The nose is so sensitive, so tender. Oftentimes when we think of New World Viognier, we get this incredibly hyper white flower and honeyed nose, where here it's so restrained, so delicate, so lightly floral. And the mouthfeel is just really special. You can tell the way that wine feels in the mouth. Whoa, there's something extra, an extra dimension here. sometimes we can actually taste, feel, and sense the quality level of a wine. And this just sends some, detectors just soaring, just going, wow, there's something really happening here. It's slightly creamy, slightly rich, slightly viscous, but not so heavy that it takes on this rich weight that's doesn't disappear. The wine is gone. The wine has this exciting energy behind it that leaves the palate just completely refreshed. And I think that's what's important to differentiate itself amongst other Viognier is the acidity, the balance, that subtlety, that tenderness, and just realize that this is really bottled history, bottled magic here, and the ultimate example of Viognier. Any comments from anyone else? Anyone have any other comparisons or comments about this property? Maybe this is your first time tasting it. It is my first time talking about it, with it in a glass in front of more than a crowd of one, because my friend and I drank the bottle ourselves.
Ian, do you know anything about the aging or fermentation process? I'm getting a little bit of maybe oak, like a vanilla nose to it. So I'm wondering if it maybe spent some time in oak.
Yeah, 18 months in wood. That's the oak regimen. Seeing if the tasting note, I know that I have that on the website. Let me just make that appear real quick here.
Hey, Ian.
Sir.
How long has this been a wine like this? Is it been, you know what I mean? Is this modern Gruyere, or has this been like this for a long, long time? It's just pretty spectacular.
Yeah. No, it had a great reputation prior to Arnaud purchasing it. Obviously, there's some really famous producers that make wine from the surrounding area, but the reverence that people have for this property is very, very special. Now, when I look at the tasting note and to try to get a little closer to your questions, again, Pinot purchased it in 2011, but Gruyere was owned and managed by a series of families for a long, long period of time. I think the history that I had here, there's the article about, that's a photo there of Mr. Arnaud, and the article in the Wine Spectator. It's 8.5 acres. That was the corrected number. 8.5 acres, not hectares. So about 3 acres. And winemaking, let's see. So there were some things that they noticed that they could improve, and they've definitely invested to do that. And certainly it's a long game. I'm not sure if the price paid, I don't think that was published, but 10,000 total bottles annual production off the property. So, and it's a protected UNESCO heritage site as well. I'm going to see if there's any other details that we left off here. Yeah, definitely sense of wood, time in wood. You can see it in the color of the wine. You can pick up a very subtle hint of vanilla on the nose, but it's super in balance with the wine and doesn't overtake that tender floral nose, but literally helps elevate it in good proportion. In our tasting tonight, we get to taste some real champions. So if you don't finish that first one, maybe come back to it again and just watch it, how it continues to inspire. It's a beautiful wine. I don't really, wines like this, I can keep a half glass all night long and just continue to go back and smell and smell and smell, and really, really savor those special tastes that you get to enjoy there. We're going to move into wine number 2, a slight newcomer to the fine wine world, because this is from Cheval Blanc, and this is Blanc from Cheval Blanc, which has not been made for very many years. James Suckling, 98 points, a wonderful and rather exotic white, aromas of pears, lychee, lemons, green apple. Fermented and aged in slightly larger oak barrels, 74 Sauv Blanc, 26 Semillon. One for the cellar. The vintage here is 2018. This is Cheval Blanc Blanc, a wonderful story. Goes back, there were vines planted here for a very, very long time as well. This property, Cheval Blanc, was actually at one point in time part of another estate. And due to taxation, that estate had to sell off this piece of vineyard, which is about 35 total acres. Again, another story of how billionaires get involved in winemaking. This property as well is owned by a big moneyed family. Here we have the restored winemaking facility with total state-of-the-art program that's been brought on over the last couple of years. 2013 is when the property went into extensive renovation and this new property emerged. The wine has had a great reputation since the 1960s. Prior to the 1960s, made very good wine, but ever since the 1960s, things really started to escalate in the reputation of this particular brand. Now, Cheval Blanc is in Saint-Emilion. It is a mixture of both alluvial and clay soils. It has almost 50% alluvial, 50% clay, no limestone on the property. This is a ripe bank producer. Their red wine is famous in the Cab Franc and Merlot blend department, but they didn't make it white. And so an opportunity to expand the wine offerings of Cheval Blanc and to appreciate some of the neighbors, that this white wine came into their world. Let me pull up here the history, some really fascinating history as well. As you go to the website for Cheval Blanc, there's a wonderful story here. I'll put this in the chat for everyone. But you can go in and really see just a beautifully constructed website that's built for long term, and the history is extensive here. You can see on the map how close it is to Palmerol, right down the road. But these vineyards were also Roman plantings from the 4th century. Now, of course, that's when they started planting vines in this area. Those vineyards are long gone, and they have been planted again and again and reorganized, modernized. But here is the estate. The actual year it was purchased was 1832. It was purchased from Figeac. Figeac had a very large vineyard, and unfortunately the death taxes caught up with Figeac, and they had to sell off this prized, and I'll correct myself from earlier, I said acres, this one's in hectares, 39 hectares is the total estate. This property had on the label the last names Jean Lassac Fourcade right up until the 1960s. In 1998, Bernard Arnault purchased this property. Okay, so I have Arnault, who is LVMH, and I think I said that incorrectly about the other gentleman, Mr. Pinot, who is Gruyere. And Mr. Pinot owns Chateau Latour. Apologize, Mr. Pinot, if you're watching. He also owns the group Artemis, which is a number of other properties, top properties in the wine world, Gruyere being one of them. Also, some significant Burgundy holdings. And in California, they own fantastic Napa producer Islay Vineyards. Got my billionaires mixed up. Apologize. Let's taste this wine together. Cheval Blanc Blanc, finished with a little wax on the top. Total productions in the hundreds, maybe 1,000 cases total for 2018. When you get into Sauvignon Blanc type of aromatics, you can almost tell that this has that Semillon element as well, just by how balanced and pretty and more complex the nose is. If it were just Sauvignon Blanc, maybe just have one dimension, a little less complexity, but here the nose is really complex. It also has been pulled back, restrained, showing that it has a very long aging window here. 2018, real classic vintage, probably an underrated vintage because of some of the neighboring vintages getting, vintage of a lifetime, vintage, best vintage ever with like 19, 16, and 15, but 18 is a very good classic vintage. The nose, the color on this wine shows its youth. It has kind of a slightly greenish hue to its golden yellow tone. Not quite as golden as the 17 Gruyere before it, but there's good concentration here. That perfume is a little bit more of, got that little more attack that Sauvignon Blanc would have. Really bright and more astringent, more intense, not into a point where the wine distracts from its quality. That's just the nature of Sauvignon Blanc, the nature of these grapes, this grape variety. It's not supposed to be Chardonnay. It's not supposed to be round and creamy, but does take on some barrel time, some a little bit of a complexity from time and wood that you can almost see that this is a youthful wine that has kind of many different parts that haven't necessarily completely combined into one message, but it does have a lot of good quality marks there. Again, wonderful weight, wonderful concentration, fleshiness. Just by the way it tastes and feels, you could tell this wine is one that you could give 15, 20 years to in your wine cellar. Probably drinks at a much more refined level by 2025, 2026, giving it another 3-4 years in the cellar before starting to drink. Any questions or comments? Gary, how's that wine treating you?
It's good. I got the green apple, really strong green apple on the nose and some in the flavor, and the acid and a very long finish.
Wine Enthusiast drinking window starts in 23. James Suckling says one for the cellar, and that's a recent review. So I'm looking for if anyone else has a guide, since this wine doesn't have much time in the marketplace and is a fairly new release. Not a lot of history to see how this wine continues to evolve, but anything that these guys have put their time and energy into tends to continue to improve and refine. And I'm sure their approach will continue to improve and refine as well. But beautiful package, beautiful product, great quality. They wouldn't have put Cheval Blanc's name on the bottle if it wasn't ready for prime time. And this wine does not disappoint. We tasted it about a year ago at a winemaker dinner that we are going to repeat very, very shortly. Our dinner with Chef Christopher Emmy from L'Orangerie in Ortolan. He's going to be joining me for a dinner, which I'll share with you here in just a moment. We put together some pretty extreme dinner experiences, and this certainly is going to be one of them. We're calling it Grape Bordeaux dinner, now versus then. Chef Emmy, really fantastic chef who does all the cooking, all the preparation, all the plating himself. So it's a team of one, and then my team is there to serve the wine and to take care of table service. We have multiple flights. Our first flight will include this very same Cheval Blanc next to Smith Lafitte and Domaine de Chevalier, all famous white productions of the highest quality. And then we'll move into a flight of Figeac and connect the stories of Cheval Blanc and Figeac, tasting both the old and new vintages of Figeac, 98 being the older vintage for this particular event, and 2015 being the newest. We'll also taste some 9. Then we'll go to Talbot and taste a wine from 1961 versus 2010 verse 16. And then Smith Lafitte again with the red wines. And these have been introduced to me for the past 20 years, with everyone saying they continue to get better. They continue to get better. Now they're getting 100-point scores. So we're going to do a little game tasting the 2015, the 2010, and then let you guess the vintage of the oldest wine that we're going to be tasting in that flight. Then we'll move to one of my other favorite producers to introduce people to. That's Chateau Ducru Boucaillou. That's in Saint-Julien. And we'll taste 2016, 1982, and 1966. And we're working with Duclos on this event. And they told me that the 82 bottling was actually recorked and rebottled at Ducru Boucaillou. So it's going to be a really special 82 to be able to taste something that was refilled, recorked by the Chateau. The 1966 is from my cellar, and a very good vintage. And this is a really great brand, also a 100-point wine in 2016. We'll finish up with Soudreau. So that's that fun dinner that's coming down the pipeline. And again, we'll feature this Cheval Blanc. Parker talks about ripe pineapple, passion fruit, white peaches, lemongrass, lime blossoms, yuzu. I like the yuzu. No, definitely in that department. Parker also recommends not comparing it to Pessac-Léognan, where Chateaubriand makes beautiful white wines as well. Okay. I hope you enjoyed the Cheval Blanc Blanc. As we can see, we're stepping carefully between Viognier, Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon blend, and now we're going to go to Chardonnay in glass number 3 with one of the all-time great producers of white Burgundy, Domaine Leflaive. From 1717, this brand has continued to inspire, and the property has made a dynamic shift to biodynamics and continues in that direction. The wine that we're tasting tonight is the 2020, the appellation Puigny-Montrachet, which I will show you the map to show you different holdings. These wines have exploded in price point northward and continue to do so. Demand is outstripping supply at a very fast and heavy rate. I'm restricted as to how much I'm allowed to buy. I would love to test the outer limit, but we buy carefully here. The roots of the family goes back to 1717. As we look at the map of Puigny-Montrachet, you can see the various land holdings. They really started to acquire a lot of these vineyards in the early 1900s. Now, Bordeaux was very organized in the 1800s. It's got classification of 1855. Burgundy had a little bit kind of a slower organization, a more classic organization. The monks started organizing it and naming certain walls and clos and separate little vineyards throughout history. But the change comes very slow in Burgundy. There's no additional land to plant. The productions are super teeny, and the average Burgundy house, I heard recently, owns somewhere in the neighborhood of the average Burgundy house of 10 hectares. So the fact that these folks own a good number of hectares in probably the preeminent appellation inside of Burgundy for white wine, Puigny-Montrachet. They are a major landowner in the Premier Cru and Grand Cru sections like Bertard-Montrachet, Chevalier-Montrachet, and Montrachet itself. And they own almost all of Clavillon. The past generation, 2015, Anne Claude was the owner of Leflaive. She passed due to cancer. She refused to participate in chemotherapy. Her belief systems were connected to her vineyards. She sought alternative solutions to her cancer. Unfortunately, passed in 2015, but the spirit that she brought and the passion that she brought will not only forever change the trajectory of the brand, but also the thought process of many, many producers around her. Biodynamics is no easy game to conquer, and Le Fleuve is a leader in biodynamic viticulture, not only in Burgundy and not only in Puigny-Montrachet, but also down in the Mâconnais, one of the fastest, most quickly developing areas in Burgundy, where this family, Le Fleuve, has significant holdings. And now there are Premier Cru vineyards evolving in the Mâconnais, in the Puy-Foussay zone. You're going to start seeing Premier Cru wines. And that is a change that has been in process for decades. So again, change coming slow, but it is coming. Here's a look at the slope of Puigny as you're at the top of the hill looking down on the village. The vineyards, the best vineyards, right in that sweet spot in kind of the upper third. As you get to the flatlands of the village, you can still have vines all the way out to the highway, but those wines tend to get blended into either the Bourgogne wine or maybe a village level if it's better quality. Here's a look inside of the facility. But those historic walls that surround the close that surround these vineyards, and those historic slopes are just magical to behold. How tightly spaced the rows are, how little fruit each vine is able to produce. Puigny-Montrachet also oak influenced, thyme and wood, 100% barrel fermentation. This is a 2020 wine. 2020 was a warmer, pretty generous vintage in Burgundy. 2021, a cooler year. And 2022 is the year that a lot of Burgundy producers were waiting for, a year that helped restock the cellars, actually a nice, generous vintage. But from 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, all pretty small vintages. But 2020 is pretty exciting. Very warm vintage. Color does not show any real signs of age. It actually speaks to its youth as a 2020 vintage. I mean, you can just smell the quality of the approach here, the purity, the way the wood is so subtly integrated already into this wine. That takes a lot of wisdom, a lot of careful use of wood. They are not shy, using a generous amount of new wood, but not trying to make it. And as you elevate into Premier Cru and Grand Cru, that use of new wood actually increases because the wine can take it a little bit more. This is a blend of their land holdings in Puigny-Montrachet, and yes, they could take some Grand Cru and some Premier Cru and probably do from the younger vines, and they call it repli, to repel down, to blend down from the better vineyards at the top of the hill into the village level wine. And that's what they do here, all estate. Super young. It almost has like a hard edge to it, like a young piece of fruit. But I'm 10, 15, 20 seconds in here tasting this wine, and you can still feel it on the palate. Incredible concentration there, and yet nothing is poking out or uncomfortable. Really tremendous power and focus. These quality marks are something I try not to get too used to. David, your experience, including this Puini, has a heavier nuttiness and buttery popcorn taste than sweeter vanilla from Vitar Montrachet. It's just all Montrachet. Okay. And you can, if you taste often the wines in this area, you know, between Chassagne, Puini, Meursault, they're all lined up right next to each other. And you can really start to become very familiar with some of the nuances. And if you taste this wine every year from La Flave, you can really just, all you're really going to notice is vintage variation. You know, that's what you're getting here, because they're using the same fruit sourcing and the same process and the same facility and the same philosophy. So that's really what's cool about being able to taste and compare these wines sometimes. Questions, comments? David and Maria, are you having dinner?
We're just having cheese.
Yeah, so, well, yeah, but I want to turn that off when we eat more. But the cheese, yeah, we're just really enjoying this. So it's pretty incredible, pretty nice.
Nice. That is my first time trying the 2020 Chardonnay. I do definitely, you know, when you think of a village level wine, you tend to think of a wine that's probably a little bit more in a prepped state, like this wine should be almost ready to drink. But I think of the three wines that we've tried tonight, this wine is in the no touch zone of the most of all three. It's still, you know, you can enjoy it, but it's got that kind of reserved restraint, that less than rounded character that tells you, hey, give this wine a little bit more time. I have only owned this wine for a very short period of time. It's the new vintage, just came in. We're very fortunate to have a good relationship with the importer, and we were given a nice allocation. I can only afford to buy it in small pieces. It's a lot of money to shell out. And when they come in with all of them at the same time. So we've got several different La Flave wines available on our site at this moment. They do tend to disappear rather quickly. But this, and if they do, I might be able to go in and get some more. But I go in and get it until it's gone. And then when it's gone, it's gone. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Moving into our next wine, and we head back into the Rhone Valley for an experience with Domaine Jamais. This is Côte Rôtie. Côte Rôtie is at the extreme north of the Rhone, right next to Condrieu, and many producers will actually co-ferment a little Viognier into their northern Rhone Côte Rôtie, just a couple percent of the white grape in the wine. This one, though, is 100% Syrah. This one is 100% stem inclusion as well, which is kind of their style at Jamais. This is a wine that you will want to also give some extra time. You need patience with these wines. They really start to perform in that 10th year. When it's 10 years old, it starts to dance. Tonight, going to taste it with you, the 2018 vintage. This wine sits today at 200. Probably 5 years ago, you could buy Jamais for 100. Probably 20 years ago, you could buy it for $50. It's going up and probably will be much more even next vintage. The price increases are steady. My 3-bottle allocation per year is teeny. But here is a look at the family, and his son is starting to make the wine. His son is Jean-Paul. His name is Joseph. And so the two generations work together. Classic facility, family owned and operated. The hillsides here have really red clay soils, and they're very, very steep, very lot of heavy work climbing the hills to work these vineyards. Again, 100% Syrah, 100% whole cluster for about 3 weeks, 22 months in barrel. 15% of that wood is new. They say the aging is 15 to 25 years. They own an amazing selection of vineyards, 20 different parcels, and many of the very famous sites up in Côte-Rôtie are mentioned in the list, including Côte Blanc and Landon. Let's get inside a glass of really killer Syrah. This is a rare treat. Last time I had Jamais was in Paris with a really famous wine buyer, and we went to Willie's Wine Bar in Paris, where you're supposed to drink wines of the Rhone Valley, and we did. And we drank an older one, which they get increasingly more smoky, more chocolatey, more white peppered. Wow, that is like a glass of stems. You could just smell that stem, just, it's pervasive at this point. Over time, it gets less, and it becomes less important in the nose of the wine. It starts to become a backup player. But at this time, it's kind of a sneak peek into this Côte-Rôtie, which is famous for needing, like I said, 10 plus years. Wow. As you get past that, and I take the glass, I start it away from my face and I bring it towards my face, and I'm smelling. At first, you get that stemminess, and then you get a little closer, and there's the fruit. Super saturated color, beautiful, deep hues of purples and violet. The nose is interesting and spicy and herbal, and the stemmy is the way to describe all of that. But it sounds so negative. It's just, this is a baby, and we want to be able to not necessarily judge it for how it is now, but what it might become. And when you're making wine, you don't get to make wine that tastes great the day you bottle it. you make wine that you might use some wisdom, some family, you got a couple generations here working together. So this is how you do it, son. And this is what will happen when the wine is 10, 15 years old. The challenge for some wineries is when you make a wine like this, you need to find buyers that will have the patience to put this wine down in the cellar, because going out and trying to find a 10-year wine from a producer like this can be very difficult. And if you want to control your destiny, you want to take good care of the bottles and not buy a bottle that someone tossed around and didn't take good care of. You want to protect the provenance of that wine. So you take possession of it early. You put it in the right place, 55 degrees on its side, keeping the cork wet, keeping it in away from light, and just let the magic in the bottle take time to develop. I think I could really enjoy just exploring this glass of wine with some really great, I think it pairs right now with some amazing music, and would just love to sit there and just smell it and watch it unravel. And, there's so much going on in that glass. It's a little disorganized at the moment, and you might smell that and go, whoa, that is wild. That is, you got some gamey nose stuff, some, like I said, like peppers and black pepper and white pepper, and just all kinds of crazy elements that are, but in the same way, it makes my mouth almost salivate smelling it. It might be my mouth trying to protect itself from that youthful, tannic, aggressive attack that you put that in your mouth, and you're going to be like, whoa, that's big and that's powerful. And it's a really exciting experience to be able to taste this, even at this point. I've never tasted a young one before. All I tasted in my life was an older version. So to be able to see it at this point. Now, I get a 3-bottle allocation. They don't come by and taste me on it. For sometimes they do, but not this particular producer. And we just buy it based on reputation alone. And so being able to taste it with you and be able to explore it with you is just really what this is about. Anyone else having a reaction like I am? Because that is, I feel like I just got introduced to a new language drinking that wine. We're going to move into wine number 5, last but not least for sure. As we tasted the white earlier, it's just good to be able to conclude with Chateau Cheval Blanc. This is their top wine. 2012 is one of my favorite vintages to be able to buy and to hold, to be able to sell. It's 2022. 12 wines are hitting the 10-year number. And I'm telling you right now, the great wines of Bordeaux, when they turn 10, they're not necessarily all perfect yet, but wow, do they change. It's that 10th year. It's just something about it. It's just the way they grow, the way they were taught to make these wines. That 10th year is just so important. Almost to the point of me saying, where if you got a top wine of Bordeaux, I wouldn't waste your money opening it until it's 10 years old. You can open a 2015 and 16 wine that got 100 points. They're just really not ready for prime time yet. And they need that, it's like pulling the roast out of the pan before it finished cooking. You need the time in the bottle for the special magic to really happen. This is a wine that's got several different top scores. 97 is the scores that we found today from Jeb Dunnick. I couldn't change my little circle. We also have 96 points from Robert Parker. But smoked black fruits, cassis, tobacco leaf, sappy flowers. Note all that emerges from this thrilling texture balance focus 2012. It opens with time in the glass, has ripe sweet tannins, and it's another one for those wines that offers pleasure today, yet will cruise for decades. People are sometimes surprised that this wine's actually 54% Merlot and 46 Cab Franc. Like I said earlier, the properties almost evenly split 50-50 Merlot and Cab Franc. And this has got a pretty good dose of Merlot for a ripe bank wine, and a pretty good dose of Cab Franc. A lot of the Pomerol wines are more like 80% Merlot and 20 Cab Franc. So this one really rides that 50-50 threshold. Again, the soils here are evenly split between alluvial and clay. Merlot, grown in the clays here, really is what you probably are seeing, and probably that alluvial lift that you're going to get in the Cab Franc. It'll just make the aromatics here really pretty. Ripe bank wines, when I said 10 years, the right bank wines will be a little bit more responsive than the left bank wines because of their Merlot and Cab Franc composition. Here's a look at the soils. Been to the property a couple of times. This property is just optimally set up for success, a perfect location. And now with the perfect ownership, producing a wine facility that's super state-of-the-art, all gravity flow. That's what you see here. They move the grapes up and empty them into these big concrete tanks. Concrete being a very classic way for the top houses. Petrus went in, they have these little concrete boxes that the grapes ferment in. Concrete absorbs the temperature of fermentation and really calms the fermentations down. Concrete is a perfect vessel for fermentations. After fermentations, they'll put them in wood. Here we look at the vineyard and the way that it's meticulously cared for. High expectations come with high amounts of effort and a huge amount of investment. The classic facility, the old house behind the state-of-the-art production facility that was added in more recent years. This is a wine I'm a little more familiar with from other vintages. I have tasted the 12 before. I will say in general, 2012 is just a really spot-on classic vintage. The vintages we tend to talk about and praise with the most reward, get the big flashier scores, are not necessarily the classic vintages. They're more of the flashier vintages, and 9, 10, 15, 16, 19 are the most recent. But 12, it's hard to be a vintage like 12 where everything's right, but it's the noise is so loud from 9 and 10 because those wines were just so whoa, before they were even made, people were talking about how perfect the vintage was. And so 12 comes along and just kind of quietly makes beautiful wines. And again and again and again, even if I were to line up 9, 10, 12, 14, 16, all these vintages next to each other, 12 just has this elegance. It's not quite as voluminous and powerful, but just something so optimal, the way they were kind of supposed to be, the classic way they were supposed to be. Color here is beautiful, and it's close to 10 years old now. You swirl it around, it's dark, beautiful, dense, deeply colored wine, but does start to show just a little bit of release. Okay, it's hitting its puberty. You know, it's just starting to show signs of advancement. Same with the nose. It moves into that perfume starts to move into that second phase, that it goes from the just fresh fruit, and it's really starting to show off some of that earth and the different types of things that happen to red wine with time. Again, the quality marks on these wines are just so really beautiful, impactful. And here today, this 2012, showing pretty young. In my particular glass that I've chosen, really has it showing it's fairly tight, and that in the mouth you can still feel a good amount of tannin and structure, just kind of blocking you from that pleasurable pool of detail that's wound inside of this glass of wine. But Merlot kind of giving you a little bit of that fleshy, rich mocha cherry, and the Cab Franc giving you some of the graphite and pencil edge type of aromatics. Think about pencil as you smell the wine. Lead pencil. Something elevated here. You can smell it, you can feel it, you can, as you taste it, you feel that length, that power. Everything's compacted here. You can tell it's just a day here that we are seeing. I opened this wine Tuesday. We sent them all out to your houses probably yesterday or this morning. They were filled in jars. I have a gentleman working for me right now that have the power of the jaws of life to secure these jars. I hope you were able to open them without breaking any fingers. I had to get some special device to help me open my own jars, so I'll have to ask him to find a happier medium between somehow bonding that plastic lid to the glass in a way that you can't get it open. But this is a really slow decantation. This wine tastes exactly like it tasted yesterday when I opened it up. I was expecting a little bit more advancement. Very pretty, very pretty, but super powerful, and it's still capable of bruising your palate. Natalie, what are you thinking?
I love this one. I love this one. I tend to go towards reds that are aged in concrete. I love my descriptor is like the funkiness of like grandma's basement, right? Like that like musty, funky smell that you sometimes get when you go into like a really dank basement is what I love about these kinds of wines. So it's perfect.
Far out. Well, just remember this wine did see time in wood, but that fermentation is in concrete for sure, and really,
which I think makes it a little more smoother than like some others, right? Where it's all concrete and then it's a little edgier.
Yeah, because it gets a little time with the contact of the oak and then the oxygen that feeds it. And also you're talking about probably some of the best wood barrels on the planet. They get the time with this wine. And the winemaking team here has got so much history and so much, wisdom with all of that they do, and the fact that they're making, basically there's two versions of Cheval Blanc, this one and the baby that they also release a second wine. And then they have the white wine, and that's basically all they do. So they have the best of everything to make the best of everything. And there's no, no demand for growing production. There's no demand for anything except for just make the very, very best wine humanly possible and put every tool to work to do so. I would love to hear any other comments. David, how you doing?
Which David?
I got a couple Davids tonight, don't I?
Yeah, I do.
David K, what are you thinking?
There's been very few beverages in my life that have made me actually tear up. There was a Scotch once when my son was born. It was Glenn Farkless. And when you remember Tiana's wedding, where you supplied the your wine.
Oh, thanks.
I've got one bottle of Chateau Cheval Blanc, a '93, the year she was born, and of course it's the occasion, but the wine itself, every time it brings back memories. I mean, this is amazing. It has lots of time left on it, but one of the very few wines in the world that have made me actually tear up is a Chateau Cheval Blanc. We all know the famous 62 and the
61. Yeah,
61. Yeah, I mean it is classic, and it's just a delight. So I can say.
Eric Lyons, how are you doing?
All is well, Ian. Thank you. Wines were fantastic. I agree. I've moved away from Cabernet-based wines the last couple of years of my life, but the Cheval Blanc's really pretty. It's very enjoyable.
Excellent. What did you guys think of? I didn't hear many comments. Was the Gamay just too wild for folks?
Reminded me of a Sin Qua Non, maybe without the fruit, but just so extracted and so big and so inky.
Yeah.
Fun to try, just too big, knocks your socks off.
Oh, I mean, it was extraterrestrial. I mean, I mean, it is wild for sure.
Definitely one of those wines that you just don't drink probably for at least another 10 to 15 years. I would say that though about most Northern Rhones. But like you said, it's fun to I've never tried actually, a 2018 Northern Rhone. So it was fun to see, like you said, to experience all that, but definitely looking forward to, I guess the next decade of what it's going to turn into.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, you can see all the elements there, the depth, the color, the power, all the ingredients are in place. They're all in the slow cooker. It just needs that patience now. And it was wild though, and super fun. I hope you'll be able to go back and continue to appreciate these, the Gruyere, the delicacy of the Viognier, the amazing Sauvignon Blanc Semillon blend from Cheval Blanc, the white, really just sensational with food. I love Bordeaux Blanc with dinner, and I'm just finishing a wine list. I've been very fortunate to work with a new top restaurant in LA called Lemon Grove, and it's on top of a wonderful private club called Astor, but it's a rooftop restaurant. And I'm very fortunate to be able to be a wine consultant. And I went in for dinner and tasted a lot of the menu, and we talked about which way we wanted to go with the food, but the food has got so many influences from all over the world, and it's just really a fantastic. If there's one theme behind it, I'd say it's an LA, experience, because we have so much that really we can pull together all the different ethnic influences into one restaurant's menu, and have all of this fresh produce at our disposal. And the chef is a champion chef, and just really put a fantastic effort together. And so I'd encourage you guys to look at Lemon Grove Restaurant in sometime in the future. It's beautiful, rooftop, corner of Sunset and Vine, by the way. And you can look out and say hi to all of the religious neighbors. What is that? Who owns all the buildings there on Sunset? What is that church called? You know who I'm talking about?
Scientology.
Scientology. Thank you. You can see the Scientology neon signs all the way down the street. And so it's a wonderful location, amazing view. Capitol building is right next door. You can see the Capitol building. And they have this just amazing rooftop restaurant. And now been able to put together a really fun wine list for the place, and it'll continue to evolve. It'll keep getting better as we continue to grow it out. But it just got put in yesterday. So if you go out to Lemon Grove, take a look at the list and let me know what you think. I'm pretty proud of it. But they have some Rhone, they have some different things. Not everything that we're tasted today, but a few of these marks are on that list. And but we also integrate a lot of great California wines, and I was able to get some wonderful aged wines, drinking Pinot Noirs from 2014, 2012, and 2010 Cabernets. So really being able to put some age on it and put them into a good spot to really appreciate them at the right time in the right place. And that's what these wines kind of need, is the right time and the right place. I take wines like this out to dinner often. Going out to a great restaurant, these are the type of wines that you probably feel pretty comfortable walking in with the bottle in your hand and giving it to the wine steward to decant, or maybe showing up with them decanted already. That's what I think these wines, kind of end up in cellars, be able to save them for a special right moment. And I thank you guys for letting me share them with you. And I hope you guys will visit our Zoom into Wine efforts. We've got some special tastings coming up in the next couple of weeks. And so I'll just focus on the Zoom into Wine activities that we have. But I will do Zoom into Wine every Wednesday night contiguously here. If I'm going to be out of town, I try to find people that can host the program in my absence. But you go to Merchant of Wine, you can click on Zoom into Wine, see our calendar. We get started with a really fun 2023 preparatory class called Reserve to Drink Better in 23. Talk about upcoming trends that are evolving in wine, and have some nice benchmark wines to be able to taste and explore and kind of expand people's horizons. On the 11th of January, it's all about Barolo. We do offer truffles if you want to have a fun gathering of folks together. You can do bottles, you can do tastings, you do just the Barolo if you like, or you could do a truffle package. And we've worked hard on getting the truffles and all the ingredients to make that a fun night. That's the 11th of January. Our monthly really showcase events will take on different names this year. We're preserving the name Stars Events for our live activities. And now it's going to be called Zoom into Wine Presents Santa Barbara. And I've got 6 top-notch winemakers coming out to join me for a night of talking about what's happening in Santa Barbara. My friend Jeff Nelson from Liquid Farm, Ernst Storm from Donica Vineyards, Mail Road, Matt Dees, Bruno D'Alfonso and Chris Curran, Paul Lotto, and a really phenomenal team called Camins to Dream. Dreams are going to be showcasing their Syrah from Zodovich. I think you're going to be really impressed with this Santa Barbara lineup. Couldn't get a better squad of influential winemakers together. That's a super top-notch gathering. I hope you guys will join us for that. Moving into future moments, we do a couple of really fun live events, like our Rhone Warriors events coming up. We have some dinners, some trips. I'm traveling a lot in 23. If you want to see all of my travel opportunities, love for you to join us from anywhere in the world. You can come and just drop down on our calendar at Learn About Wine and check out my wine trips. We just got back from Portugal. We're going to Napa, to Sicily, to Argentina, and Spain next year. And Sicily is coming together. We're selling, this particular trip is selling quite quickly. If you want to revisit Napa Valley, I've got some really top brands that we're going to be hanging out with: Dana, Arrow and Branch, Tierra Roja, eating some great restaurants, visiting with Aaron Pott, Unwritten Wines, Acumen, Elise Addicts Institution, and having a lot of fun on a 3-day weekend in the middle of February in Napa Valley, if you want to meet me there. Well, that's my program tonight. Thanks for joining us for Zoom into Wine. I hope to see you guys soon. And wine of the night was Chateau Gruyere from Eric. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Agreed.
that. Yeah.
Cheval Blanc was the best, but Gruyere was the sleeper one that I didn't expect to be so good.
Awesome. Gary, what was your favorite tonight?
I like the Viognier.
Yeah, the Gruyere. I think it's hard to match that experience. There's just so few references and such an epic estate, and the future of that wine is pretty magical with the investment that they put into that. And yeah, I'm just really thankful that I get to share that with you guys tonight, because I love sharing this wine off. And you can sit and drink a bottle of wine by yourself if you want, but it's no fun. I love to share it with people and get people to be like buzzed about it. And I'm just super, super thankful to get to do that with you guys. So,
ethereal is thrown around a lot, but that wine Gruyere was ethereal. Like it's another. Yeah, I agree. That's crazy good. Thanks, Ian. Really appreciate it.
Well, have a happy New Year, everybody. I hope you'll have lots of magical moments to hang memories on. And thanks for sharing these wines with me. Have a good night.
Happy New Year.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Bye. Cheers.
Happy birthday, Gary.
Thank you.